Hey, Dethroners, welcome back to another episode of the Dethroning Your Inner Critic podcast. I am your host, Joanna Kleinman, psychotherapist, empowerment coach, and CEO of the Dethroning Your Inner Critic coaching company. And today I want to talk about what 2023 prepared you for. I've been hearing from a lot of people that are feeling very challenged in their life. So many people are feeling like parts of their lives are just no longer a fit for them. And that can be an incredibly uncomfortable feeling. So a lot of people right now, including myself, are in the process of some sort of shift in their life. So I'm recording this at the beginning of 2024. And right now there's a lot of upheaval in the world. We're living in a very tumultuous time. And even if things are not shifting for you on an individual level, I think we're all feeling that uneasy feeling and like we're sort of in a swirl right now. So if this is you, if you're feeling like you're wanting to change or shift something this year, maybe you're even feeling a little fearful or overwhelmed because you aren't quite sure what direction your life is going to take, you are certainly not alone in this feeling. Maybe you're realizing that there's some part of your life that needs to change. Maybe it's the way you've been living. Maybe it's in a relationship. Maybe it's something about your past choices, or maybe it's something in your career. As I went through navigating my dad's decline in health and supporting my mother through that, and my dad did eventually pass away in September of 2023. And I carried a lot of fear in my body during 2023. And I feel like right now I'm in the process of purging a lot of that stuck energy of fear that was really embedded in my nervous system. And so there's a lot of that going on in the world right now, a lot of fear that's stuck in our bodies. So our personal energy is impacted not just by the things that are going on in our life, but by what's going on in the world. So as I reflect back on 2023, I can now see that all of this overwhelm and fear actually served a purpose for me, because I have a very old habit of forgetting to trust the universe. And I suspect that I'm not alone in this old habit. But now that I have some distance, now that I have a wider perspective on 2023, and I can see the big picture, this was a huge transformational year for me. There were a lot of old parts of my old self that were ready to leave me. There were a lot of old parts of other people within my program that they were shedding old parts of themselves too. So I've had many parts of my old self that I have shed over and over and over again. And I've been working on shedding that old identity for over 20 years. But as we continue to shed those old parts of ourselves and we become lighter and lighter, as we remove those layers of our ego, which I call our inner critic mind, right? And we heal those old wounds that we sometimes didn't even know that we had, what happens is that next part of you that wants to be released comes to the surface, right? So as we shed those old parts of the old self, right, that are ready to leave, those next phases of the old self emerge. And it can kind of feel like you're on this roller coaster. So sometimes it can be confusing because you might even feel like you're regressing, right? I'm going back into this old fear. What is this? You know, that old fear and doubt and anxiety, and that old fear and doubt and anxiety starts to show up again. And you're like, wait a minute, I thought I was done with this. But here's the thing. As we continue to evolve and awaken and transform ourselves and our lives, we have to repeatedly purge those many layers of our old identity. It's really what happens before we go through a rebirth of sorts, right? We need for those old parts to die over and over again, okay? Because shedding the old identity of who you used to be happens in many different ways and takes many different forms. And that can often, when it's going on, it can feel strange. You can feel a little low in your energy or your mood, or like you're a little off kilter, and you might feel like you're going through that regression. Okay. So if you're going through a dark night of the soul, you're not alone. And I want you to ask yourself this question: where can you trust the process of this? Right? So when I look at 2023, I am so grateful for the love and support that I received from so many people that carried me through one of the most challenging years of my life. And if it wasn't for love, these challenges would have been 1,000 times harder. Okay. So love is something that we can all share together. We can help lift each other out of anything if we can create that love and connection. And that first has to come in creating that love and connection with our inner selves, our true authentic selves. So I am very grateful for my husband, my children, my mom, my extended family, my friends, and so grateful for the love from all of the women in my Mastering Your Mind community. That they carried me through. And that was one of the biggest things that I was grateful for in 2023. And also the love that I feel from the universe. So where are you in your life right now? Where are you in your growth? See, we're often moving so fast and we're so busy that we don't take the time to get quiet and still and ask ourselves those questions. And when we take the time to get still, we might find that the answer can surprise us. And it's good to ask these questions when we're struggling, because that answer might not be what you expect. You know, let's say you're having a tough day, you're feeling a little anxious, you're feeling overwhelmed about your life, and you ask that higher self, that authentic self, the question: where am I in my life right now? Where am I in my growth? Right? So that authentic self, that's the part of you that shows up when you separate yourself from your old automatic self. That's that inner critic self. Now, I will tell you that I have to deliberately access my authentic self every single morning, because I wake up every morning into my old conditioned inner critic self. It never leaves us. Okay. So just like we wake up in the morning a little disheveled and we have to fix our hair and brush our teeth and, put some makeup on to look like ourselves, right? This is exactly what happens with our minds. We wake up into that automatic mind that's rooted in that fear, what if future thinking, and believing that we've got to figure out all the solutions to our future. We forget to trust the universe. So my morning ritual is to meditate and then pull a card from one of my favorite oracle decks by Tosha Silver called the Wild Offerings Oracle. And this morning I pulled a card, and here's what it said. It said, the ultimate self-sufficiency is relying on God. It doesn't mean saying I don't need people. It means God is my source, and I'm willing to receive all the help, love, and support that wants to come. So you can use whatever word for God you want. You could say it's the universe. You could say it's your guides. You could say it's your source. You could say it's just that energy that sort of has life flow where it flows. But the bottom line is that we're all susceptible to get sucked back into that worry and fear that comes from that automatic inner critic mind that convinces us that it's only up to us to get life to go where we want it to go. And it's actually the polar opposite. When we can surrender to the flow and be open to learn the lessons that we're supposed to learn along the way, we are then living a completely different life because we are deliberately creating the energy of peace and balance and freedom and trust. And that fosters the energy of love. That's what opens us up to the higher energies of love and connection. That's our true purpose in life, to connect to those energies of love and connection and let that energy guide us instead of trying to strong arm life and figure it out and make sure that everything flows the way we say it should, right? So if there's something going on in your life, or maybe it's your business, your relationship, your health, what carries us through these tough times is love and connection and that higher purpose, which is to connect to your inner self. That's where you find your self-love. That's where you find your self-compassion. Okay. So you may have something in your life that you want to shift or change. Okay. And I want you to unhook yourself from that automatic thinking that there's something wrong and actually start to lean into the idea that your life is trying to teach you or show you something. So now that I have some distance from 2023, I can clearly see my life was trying to show me that when I grip tightly to wanting a particular outcome or result in my life, it actually sabotages me from being able to access love and connection and my higher purpose. And life has an interesting way of moving us through the challenging times and changing us in the process. So, do you ever notice that the most important lessons that you learn are the ones that come from the most challenging times? When you have a wider perspective in your life and you have some distance from that challenging time, you can clearly see the lessons that were meant for you. Okay. Like maybe you went through a divorce, or you were laid off, or you left a soul-sucking job, right? And after a few years, you can see the lessons in that challenging and painful experience. And you can see what you learned about yourself, right? You might even say that you're almost glad that you went through that challenge, since you're now on the other side of it. And now you have access to a part of yourself that you didn't have access to before, right? So when we're in the middle of it, we forget, right? We forget that life is always guiding us towards what's on the other side of the struggle, all right? And we have to remind ourselves daily not to resist the process, to remember to trust the wisdom of the universe and to trust the wisdom of our own inner intuitive knowing. That's how we access what our soul truly wants. We're always being guided towards change and growth. So in 2024, if you want to create a vision or you want to manifest something in your life, okay, you might first have some stuff from your past that you need to clean up so you don't drag it with you into that life that you're designing. And the only way to see what we need to clean up from our past is to make space for reflection. So when I took the time to reflect on 2023, I was blown away by how many things came to me this past year that had actually been visions from a long time ago. But without this reflection, I would have automatically been focused on what I'm creating instead of looking at what's already shown up in my life and seeing something very important. And that is that it showed up in my life when I wasn't even expecting it. That's the interesting thing. When we look and see what are the most important things that came into our life, it usually comes at a time where we couldn't have predicted any of it. Now, there may have been things that came before it, but when it showed up, it just kind of showed up. That unexpected friendship, that relationship that walked into your life, that amazing job opportunity, right? It just kind of comes. So I look at my father's death, the way I handled that, the way my mom handled that, It was a million miles away from anything I could have predicted. And I had a lot of fear around that for many, many years. And the relationship I have now with my dad, now that he's in another dimension, that's nothing that I could have predicted, right? I have a deep relationship with him now, although he's somewhere else. So we have so much fear about something, and we really think that that fear serves a purpose. And all it does is drain us of our vital life force. I had so much fear about my dad dying for decades, right? Then when it actually happens, we can look back and realize all that mental and emotional energy that we spent worrying. Okay. I mean, I spent 20 years worrying about my dad's death, right? And then I look back on the retreats that I led and the women that I connected with over this past year and the lives that were transformed. I spent so much energy worrying about how all of that was going to go. And of course, it was beyond anything I could have ever predicted in my wildest dreams. The women who came, the connections that were made, the friendships that turned into soul sister connections, none of that was predictable. So I invite you to take the time to reflect on 2023. I invite you to make a list of what was challenging about last year. Make a list of what was really good for you, right? Can you reflect back on what 2023 taught you? Right? 2023 was definitely a year for me and a lot of other people that were in my orbit to shed another layer of our old identity and to shed that tight grip that we have to those outcomes, right? And I will tell you that I was gripping so tightly that in the middle of 2023, I ended up with this weird shoulder injury that came out of nowhere. And I reflected on that. I actually asked my body to tell me what this shoulder injury was about. And I heard loud and clear the message that I was gripping tightly to control parts of my life that I don't have any control over. So when you're reflecting on the lessons of 2023 and what were your most important lessons, what can you be grateful for? What can you see that you're no longer wanting to drag with you into this new year? Maybe it's some old pieces of yourself that are rooted in your past, right? So for many of you, when you start to make that gratitude list, it can really become huge because you can see so many things that you're grateful for, really including just gratitude for being alive. Right? When we're going through challenging times in our own lives, right? We often look at what's wrong and we can't see the light. So when you take a moment to organize your reflections and you look at what happened and you look at what you learned and you look at what you're grateful for, these can be really powerful connections. So even if you just take 10 or 15 minutes out of your day to consciously look at these reflections, okay? Now, after you look at these reflections, ask yourself what you are ready to release from this past year. And take the first few things that come to your mind. Again, you might be surprised by the answer. You might find something very specific, or it could maybe be sort of a general thing like, I am done with the struggle. I am done with the tight grip. I am done trying to control things that I have no control over. So in the recognizing what you're ready to let go of, you can also reflect on what you envision or invite for 2024, right? If you're letting go, what does that make room or space for? Remember, you've heard when one door closes, another opens. When we shed those old layers, we really invite completely new layers of ourselves and our life to emerge. And maybe for you, it's something that you want to heal about yourself. Right? Maybe you're ushering in something very specific that you really want in your life. One of my clients did this reflection and recognized that her 25-year career in corporate is no longer a fit for what her soul wants, right? She wants to usher in a new career. And right now she has to stay in her current job, but she's learning to trust the process and knows that the universe is supporting her and will reveal to her when the timing is right for her to leave. And that trust makes a huge difference for her because she's spent her whole life white knuckling her life. So this new sense of trust just creates this way of being able to be grateful for exactly what her life already is. She's bringing joy and gratitude and even feeling a level of abundance in her life, and she hasn't even changed any circumstances, which is really extraordinary. That's really the key. It's not about changing the circumstances. It's really about shifting your energy right now. And in that shift of energy, those things that we want come, but they come because energetically, we're just different, right? So trust that all this awakening, all this recognition, this is the next part of your soul's evolution. So where do you need more love? Where do you need more connection? Where do you need to get back to that deeper purpose, which is just to find connection and love, right? What are you working on in 2024? See, our inner critic wants to push us right back into fear, right? And this is where meditation and journaling in the morning can become a lifeline. It's like a little mini hibernation, right? Even if it's just for 15 minutes or 30 minutes, okay? It really does allow you to take that time to let your soul speak to you, because the soul knows what we need to grow and evolve, all right? But the inner critic is the one that creates the fear, right? And you may be afraid of change, okay? Sometimes it's scarier to let your soul speak to you. Sometimes we feel like it's safer to just stick with what we know. But that's actually the thing that makes our life smaller and smaller. So you may be one of the many people that are feeling pulled to unshackle yourself from that old programming and step into rebirthing a new identity that's aligned with your soul. Okay. This might be a big year of rebirth and finally stepping into who you're meant to be. And that rebirth can be intense, right? Sometimes that journey isn't easy, but there is a new strength when you get to the other side. There's a new self when you get to the other side, right? There's a new heart opening and heart awakening when you get to that other side, okay? So there's all sorts of things that are waiting for you if you can just learn to trust that you're being guided, okay? The opposite of heart awakening is staying in that fear. So life is not what it was. It's not what it was last year. It's not what it was 5 years ago. It's certainly not what it was 10 years ago. What's important to you now? What are you creating differently now than the way that you created your life before? Because the old way is about the struggle. So in the midst of this transformative journey, as you're breaking free from these constraints of your old programming, 2024 can be a profound year of rebirth for you. A year that's dedicated to stepping into that true self. And if you're needing some support, I have the perfect program for you in the Mastering Your Mind program. If this is something that you are curious about, if it's something that you feel has been calling you for a while, I know some people have, stayed listening to my podcast and they're like, oh, someday. Well, maybe now, maybe today is the day. Okay. If you're afraid to reach out to me, don't be afraid. Don't have fear stop you. It might be a no, and that's okay. But if you're kind of feeling like maybe this is something that could be for you, then we should connect. So go to my website and click on the Clarity Conversation button, and we can have a conversation. And there would be an opportunity for you in this program to create a life that's aligned with staying grounded in joy, releasing the resistance, and trusting the universe to help you flow through the rough waters that you might be swimming in right now. Thanks for listening, everybody. Bye.